Okay. Well, we may not be able to live stream, but we did have only one of them or two of them recorded. Yeah. Oh. Try live stream. Oh. And when it's not working for Owen, it's bad.
It's really bad.
Because if it was me, well, you could say, well, on the server, it's the operator, but.
We never say that.
Oh, yeah. Owen probably gets sick of me. Technology, they call that code 18.
Code 18?
Yes, where the problem is 18 inches from the screen. That's me.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna call it code 18. It says this meeting is being live streamed.
Yes.
Well, we could just record it.
Okay, yeah, I got that running.
Okay.
Thanks, I'll record it. Okay. Okay, sharing your line.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee meeting. Prior to us starting the meeting, I would like to read Pembroke's Land Acknowledgement Statement. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. And now I call this meeting to order, and we ask for approval of the agenda. Moved by Ed, seconded by Ian, all in favor. Carried. The minutes of February the 26th of the meeting having been circulated, are there any errors, omissions? If not, can I ask for a mover and a seconder? Moved by Ian, seconded Marie Josie. Any errors? No? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Seeing none, we'll move ahead into new business. The first one is A-224, 1036 Pembroke Street East, Bell and Associates Architecture. Owen, can we have a report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, James Bell of Bell and Associates Architecture, has submitted a site plan proposing the use of an eating establishment, takeout, in a unit of a newly constructed commercial building at 1036 Pembroke Street East. Mr. Bell previously applied for zoning bylaw and official plan amendments, a minor variance, and a site plan agreement for the commercial development of the property. Under these applications, the development was to consist of an eating establishment with a drive-through facility and 2 retail stores. As such, parking requirements for the property were calculated based off of these uses. 24 parking spaces were shown on the submitted site plans, meeting the total combined requirements for all of the aforementioned uses. Building permit 2023-20 was issued for the construction of the commercial building, and site works proceeded accordingly. Since the completion of the site works, a change of use has been proposed for one of the units in the commercial building, from a retail store to an eating establishment takeout. This change of use is permitted under the Highway Commercial C2 zoning of the property. However, regarding the zoning bylaws parking requirements, 5 spaces per 100 square meters of gross floor area are required for an eating establishment takeout, whereas only 3.5 spaces per 100 square meters of floor area are required for a retail store. As such, the total number of required parking spaces for the property, based on the proposed change of use, increases from 24 spaces total to 26 spaces total. As the site works have already been completed, with the parking lot configured for 24 spaces, the applicant is requesting that relief be granted in the form of 2 parking spaces. The requested relief is minor in nature at only 2 parking spaces out of 26, or 8% relief. It can be considered minor in light of all other requirements of the zoning bylaw having been met, thereby meeting the intent of the zoning bylaw. The property is designated highway commercial by the official plan 2016. The highway commercial classification of land means that the predominant use of land in the area so designated shall be for retail and business establishments that are typically dependent on high volumes of traffic or that are heavily transportation oriented. The scope of permitted uses shall include restaurants and fast food outlets. Therefore, the proposed eating establishment takeout use is completely in keeping with these directives in the official plan, and the approval of the requested relief will allow for this use to take place at 1036 Pembroke Street East. The official plan continues that the highway commercial area will continue to evolve as an automobile-oriented commercial district and as major traffic generators depend on exposure to and location on high-volume arterial and collector roads. Pembroke Street East, at the point of the property, is classified as Kings Highway 148, a provincial highway, and is the primary vehicular eastern entrance into the city of Pembroke. Also in the immediate vicinity, Angus Campbell Drive is classified as a collector road by Schedule B of the official plan. These 2 significant roadways bring traffic to existing commercial uses in the area, such as Pembroke Mall, Bulk Barn, and the LCBO, along with large retail stores across the Laurentian Valley border. The proposed use will benefit from the exposure that comes with this location, and in turn, the general location will be enhanced by the addition of a new business that will draw further traffic and attention to the area. As such, not only is this directive under the official plan met, but the requested relief being granted will be desirable within and consistent with the character of the neighborhood. And therefore, the planning department is recommending that the committee approve relief from minimum number of parking spaces required for an eating establishment takeout in a highway commercial C2 zone for 1036 Pembroke Street East.
Thank you, Owen. Were there any submissions received regarding the application?
A single informational inquiry was received regarding this application.
Okay, thank you. Are there any representatives here that would like to speak to the application?
Amy Sobalski of Bell and Associates Architecture is present via Zoom to speak to the application.
Okay, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Owen. I believe Owen covered the majority of the points that we wanted to make as well. If we had any questions, I can certainly address them.
Any questions? Yes, Ian?
Do we know what the second eating establishment is going to be? Is it going to be like a similar fast food type establishment? Or is that what's envisioned?
At this time, I'm not privy to say, but I do believe it's not an eat-in establishment. It's just a takeout.
Any further questions? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just glad to see that business is moving ahead. We need jobs within the community, and the Planning Act obviously allows for this slight revision to parking, which would endeavor to have the business continue forward. In the effect that we said no what would have been the outcome? Would they have not been able to proceed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the use would not be able to proceed.
Okay, well, I'm in favor of it based on the recommendations and the Planning Act's recommendations as well. It'll be good for the community.
Can we have a motion then, please? Moved by Marie-Josie, seconded by Ed. Any further questions? All in favor? Thank you very much. Carried. Next one is Z-4 2024, 659 McKay Street, JD Planning. Can we have a report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant, Jessica Deust of JD Planning, on behalf of the property owners, has submitted a site plan proposing the addition of 4 dwelling units to the existing converted dwelling of 2 dwelling units at 659 McKay Street to make it a converted dwelling of a total of 6 dwelling units. The property is currently zoned residential type 3-13 by the zoning bylaw. The R3-13 zoning permits up to 3 dwelling units on the property, along with site-specific relief being granted for a minimum front yard setback of 4.74 meters, a projection of 68.58 centimeters into the required side yard for a chimney, and a reduced parking requirement of 3 parking spaces. The proposed R3-47 zoning is required to permit a converted dwelling, as well as to provide site-specific relief to allow for said converted dwelling to have a maximum of 6 dwelling units and to address the following deficiencies: minimum lot frontage, minimum front yard setback, minimum interior side yard setback, minimum number of parking spaces required, access driveways, parking area location on lot, total driveway width, and landscaping requirements for buffer strips. All other standard R3 provisions for a converted dwelling are met or exceeded, including minimum lot area, minimum rear yard setback, minimum interior side yard setback for the proposed addition, and minimum lot depth. Further, with deficiencies of the existing building, which was constructed in 1910, removed, the proposed addition itself is only deficient in the minimum lot frontage and parking requirements. Therefore, this application can be viewed as meeting the intent of the zoning bylaw. The proposed R3-47 zoning is compatible within the surrounding area, as McKay Street is lined with a diverse mixture of zoning. Immediately abutting the property to the south is a multi-residential building in an R4 zone. On the direct opposite side of McKay Street is a C1 zone with dwelling units above ground floor commercial uses. As well, an R3-12 zone with another multi-residential building. Beyond the applicable block, McKay Street is lined with converted dwellings in a variety of zones. The proposed zoning and the proposed use is highly compatible within the surrounding area. Regarding parking, the zoning bylaw requires 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit for a converted dwelling. In the case of this application, that puts the number of required parking spaces at a total of 9. 8 are proposed due to constraints of the property. While this means that relief of a single parking space is required, the proposed zoning in fact increases the parking ratio from that of the current zoning, which is 1 parking space per dwelling unit, to 1.33 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The proposed increase in ratio would bring the zoning of the property more in line with the intent of the zoning bylaw. To accommodate the above noted parking on the property, relief is necessary from another section of the zoning bylaw, which requires a buffer strip of 3 meters around a parking area providing more than 4 off-street parking spaces in a yard that abuts a lot in a residential zone. The proposed site plan shows a 1.5 meter buffer strip along the north and east property lines, meaning that relief of 1.5 meters is required. On the southern property line, no significant buffer strip is proposed, requiring full relief. Along this property line, this lack of buffer strip can be mitigated by the fact that this portion of the southern property that immediately abuts the applicable parking area is also a yard and a parking area itself for a multi-residential building. Further, a new privacy fence around the entirety of the property is shown on the proposed site plan, mitigating potential concerns regarding these reliefs. Regarding access driveways to the above noted parking area, the proposed site plan shows 2 separate single lanes, 1 each for ingress and egress. The zoning bylaw requires that separate single lane entrance and exit driveways shall not be less than 3.05 meters. Both of these access lanes are shown to meet this requirement, with the exception of a single point where the egress lane is only able to be 3.04 meters due to the location of the existing building. So relief of 0.01 meters is required for this under the site-specific zoning, which can be viewed as incredibly minor and in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw. The property is designated residential under the city's official plan. This application is strongly in keeping with the intent of the official plan, as according to the official plan, the city of Pembroke will encourage all forms of residential intensification that creates a potential supply of new housing units. Residential intensification will be encouraged in the built-up areas of the city where there is sufficient existing or planned infrastructure to accommodate such development. Council's policy being that through the intensification of land use in the existing built-up areas involving infill, redevelopment, and the conversion of existing buildings, Pembroke will continue to accommodate new residential units within the already built-up area. The proposed zoning is strongly in keeping with this direction, as the proposed addition of 3 new dwelling units in an already built-up area will contribute to new housing stock through intensification. Further, the official plan aims to promote efficient and pleasant residential environments and neighborhoods. Within a 1 kilometer radius of 659 McKay Street are schools: Champlain Discovery Public School, Highview Public School, Cathedral Catholic Elementary School, Fellows High School, and Bishop Smith Catholic High School. Parks: Pansy Patch Park, Kinsman Park, and Harvey Fraser Nature Park. The official plan goes on that a neighborhood that is an area in which safe pedestrian movement between all parts shall be promoted, and that sidewalks constructed to an appropriate municipal standard on one side for any local or collector road and 2 sides for an arterial road. McKay Street and many of the other local roads in the area exceed this standard, with sidewalks on both sides of the road. This makes for efficient and safe pedestrian movement within the neighborhood. The property is located on a portion of McKay Street that is designated as a local road by Schedule B of the official plan. That stated, the property is within 50 meters of Bell Street and 250 meters of River Road, both designated as collector roads, and within 550 meters of the portion of McKay Street that turns into a collector road. This means that the property is well located for efficient vehicular movement within the city. The official plan continues that all residential development shall be adequately serviced with municipal water and sewer services, waste disposal, and utilities, subject to prior verification that there is adequate capacity. Full water and sanitary sewer servicing exists to the building, and the requirement of a building permit for the proposed addition will trigger the approval of the operations department to ensure adequate servicing capacity to the property. The provincial policy statement 2020 states that land use patterns within settlement areas shall also be based on a range of uses and opportunities for intensification and redevelopment, where this can be accommodated, and that planning authorities shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities to meet market-based and affordable housing needs of current and future residents. This application promotes intensification by, again, providing 3 additional dwelling units in this area of the city and simultaneously increasing the mixture of housing density options. Therefore, the application is consistent with the current provincial policy statement. As such, the planning department is recommending the approval of this zoning bylaw amendment for 659 McKay Street from a residential type 3-13 zone to a residential type 3-47 zone, as the application is in keeping with the intents of the zoning bylaw, official plan, and PPS.
Thank you, Owen. Were there any submissions received regarding this application?
Prior to the meeting, 2 informational inquiries were received. One of the informational inquiries did raise concerns, but they were concerns under the property standards bylaw and landlord tenant matters. So there were no issues relating to land use planning raised.
Thank you. Is there anyone here representing the application and wants to say something?
Jessica DeOst of JD Planning is present via Zoom to represent the application.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. I think, again, Mr. Hutton's summarized everything quite well, but we've worked with staff to come up with a site plan and building design that works well given the existing parameters of the existing building. As he's mentioned, much of the relief required is triggered and related to the existing site conditions. And so we have come up with a building design that works and functions well on the site while providing much needed rental housing stock in the city. I'm sorry, I'm available to answer any questions if you do have any. And I do have with me the owner of the property, Kirk Brogan, if you have any questions specific to him as well.
Are there any questions? Yes, Ian.
So I'm certainly in agreement with the need for more apartments. In our last meeting, I think we did 2 approvals for, I think, a total of almost 10 or 12 new rental units. My question is one that maybe this year wouldn't have been needed, but we're obliterating almost every side yard. There's barely a buffer at the backyard. Where are we putting snow when the majority of this yard is driveway or parking?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I might let Kirk speak to this a little bit more, but there is an area towards the southeast corner of the property that has a landscape area there, and it's sort of an odd articulation on the property, so that would leave some space for snow storage in that location, but I anticipate that much of it would be moved off-site. But I will let Kirk speak to that some more.
Yes, good evening, everybody. It's Kirk. I'm joining in from out of town. Hopefully I have good service. But we do have a little bit of room left for some snow, and that will be a requirement that if there's a large snowfall like last year, there will be some required, and we're more than prepared to do that.
Okay, because the area I think we're being drawn to is half the size of a single parking space. So I wouldn't have suspected that would be the answer for where we're placing snow. But you're saying we're gonna remove it off site?
Correct.
Okay.
Anything further? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Kirk, welcome. The parking designation that's shown on the preliminary plan here shows, I believe, is 8 spaces, that's correct? For
That's
parking?
correct.
I am going to let Jessica, if we could direct that question to Jessica, we can, she does have the plan in front of her.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. There's 8 spaces shown on the site plan.
Okay, my question is, many people, couples, or some people have 2 vehicles. What will happen if they have 2 vehicles? Will they have to park off-site? Will they double up? And again, it's just a question. I was an owner of 2 vehicles at one time, down to 1. But many families and individuals, couples have 2 vehicles. How do you plan to handle that if there's 2 vehicles?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can appreciate your question, and 2 of the units will have availability for 2 extra spaces because we do exceed a 1-to-1 unit parking space ratio. So of the 6 units provided, obviously 2 of those would be able to have the parking spaces at a 2-for-1 ratio. Other than that, the remainder of the parking spaces, and if there is any deficiency, would need to be dealt with through leasing and rental agreements. Kirk may have comments additional to that, but this is something that we feel can be appropriately managed through those leasing agreements. Kirk, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, we're correct on that. We do have, as Jessica mentioned, and we will be looking at that, as there will be one parking space per apartment with the option of a second one as a first come first served basis on the leasing agreements.
Thank you. I have one more little question. It's in regards to the province's push for affordable housing, quotation marks, whatever that means. Are these units going to be slated towards more affordable rents? I know it's, people want to make money. If you're a developer, you don't want to lose money. I can understand that. But, sitting on the Renfrew County Housing Authority as well, I understand, there's 1,000 families waiting for a decent place to live, and there's a 10-year waiting period. Do you have any comment on that?
We're very much pushing a more affordable housing on this specific development. This is not going to be an ultra high-end, luxury rental. These are going to be very well-appointed, affordable units. And I think the specific site that we're talking about on this one, we're going to be able to meet that mandate without any issues, especially being a renovation and not a full tear down and rebuild.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Is there anyone here, interested party who wish to address the application? Oh. Any further comments from members? Have a motion then, please. Yes, Rachel. Moved by seconder. Further discussion? Seeing not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Next, we go to housekeeping amendments in Pembroke. Yes, thank you, Pauline.
Okay, so this zoning bylaw amendment will deal with short-term rentals, as well as other housekeeping items that were required to be addressed or have been issues with our current zoning bylaw. So there are, I think, 9 items. So I don't know, maybe after every one, do you want to ask questions, or do you want me just to go through it all and you can ask questions after? One by one? Okay, one by one it is. Okay, so the first item that we're going to deal with is short-term rentals. And that was before the Planning and Development Committee at their meeting of February 6th. The city's had several complaints about short-term rentals, and we've had no policies or licensing in place for this use. So 3 options were brought before the committee. The first option was to leave it status quo. Presently, the zoning bylaw doesn't explicitly address short-term rentals, so we've had to interpret and enforce short-term rentals because they were not considered a permitted use under the zoning bylaw. Our second option would be to allow short-term rentals within the city, but this would be viewed as a middle ground, because it would allow for short-term rentals in certain zones, subject to detailed short-term rental provisions being met. But the city would not enter into the business of licensing these short-term rentals. So the recommended short-term rental provisions would include that there'd be only one short-term rental operated on a single property, that a short-term rental would only be permitted in single detached, semi-detached row houses, duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and converted dwellings in R1, R2, and R3 zones, that a minimum of 1 standard parking space per occupied bedroom be required for the short-term rental, that short-term rental should not become a nuisance in regards to noise, odor, garbage, traffic, or parking, and that short-term rentals shall be compliant with all other applicable bylaws, but not limited to building bylaws, fire bylaws, noise, parking, property standards, and traffic control bylaws. So this option number 2, would have a minimal impact on cost, resources, and staff time. Option 3 was to permit short-term rentals in the zoning bylaw and also to license and regulate this use. And this would cause more approval process, more inspections, and would have an impact on staff time, resources, and costs. So the Planning and Development Committee at their meeting in February recommended option 2 to amend the zoning bylaw to add the definition of a short-term rental along with the set of short-term rental provisions. The Planning and Development Committee also recommended that the short-term rental operator does not have to reside on the same property upon which the short-term rental is being operated. Staff had recommended that a short-term rental that the short-term rental must be the primary residence of the operator, but the committee decided to remove this section. So once that direction was received, we put an ad in the newspaper on February 29th, and we're here this evening to get direction then on the short-term rentals. Is there any questions on the short-term rental? And Owen and I, because Owen wrote the original report, so he's available to answer questions as well.
Yeah, I do have questions with like mainly directed at the planning, members of the planning and development committee for the, like, to me, the having the owner of the residence being there as a citizen ensures that someone is going to be there to control noise or intervene if, people in the short-term rental are being a nuisance. I'd like to get a little bit of background for the rationale on removing that recommendation from staff. Is there anyone, do you have information to provide? Do you know why that was done?
They felt that because there's not a lot of complaints and not a lot of short-term rentals in the air in Pembroke, that they felt that it shouldn't be just limited to the primary residence, that if somebody bought a house, then they could use it as an Airbnb or VBRO. That was the direction that we received. So that was how we changed the.
So we're assuming there aren't many, but there's no way of really knowing how many there are. Or do we have a sense of how much of the housing stock is used as short-term rental?
Well, you researched it a little bit. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I did do some basic research by going on the applicable platforms, whether that be Vrbo or Airbnb. The ones that were visible on the websites it was a minimal number, but you're correct. It's not, I don't think that's a definitive research, but preliminarily, we were generally only finding small numbers, like 4 to 5 at a time.
Okay. And so this housekeeping item is coming from complaints from citizens?
Yes. Yes, through Mr. Chairman, yes.
Yeah.
So that's what started. And so then we felt, okay, let's bring this forward to the Planning and Development Committee to see if there's an interest in adding some general provisions and a definition, at least, into our zoning bylaw. And there was an interest in doing that. There wasn't an interest in licensing them at this point because there's so minimal amount. We've also taken part in, Owen has taken part in a symposium with other Renfrew County planners about their experiences with short-term rentals in the county of Renfrew. And we're nothing like Calabogie, for instance,
right.
Dealing with 800, so we're not at that scale at all. And so based on that, we felt that at least having the zoning definition and the provisions helps the planning department to be able to ensure, that they're legal and that they're, complying with some general requirements. Some of the complaints that we've received have been, to be honest, from other motels, because they're not being charged, the commercial taxes. And we did check with MPAC. And they're still considered residential, so they still pay residential tax. So they can be a lower amount than the hotels.
Yeah. Okay. No, I certainly believe having a definition and some provisions is a good first step. If we think that this is not a big problem, I don't know.
Through you, just if I could just respond to that, if it becomes a larger problem, we'll be back, to committee and council, and then we'll be looking at licensing and more stringent provisions.
Well, that's unfair, Mr. Chair. She just stole my thunder.
Oh, sorry.
So basically, from my point of view, the way I looked at it, because I can only speak for myself, I can't speak on behalf of the committee that voted in favor of it. Number one was that I think I asked the question of have we received any nuisance complaints? And I think the answer was no.
Yeah, that's right.
Colleen's saying that's correct. Number two, we have such a small number that to me made it less of a concern. Obviously, the city of Pembroke, we're not going to be like Toronto and Montreal with presumably hundreds of VRBOs. So from my perspective, it was one of lesser regulation, but as Ms. Sorial just mentioned, if it starts becoming a problem, I'll be the first to say we need to readdress it. But so far it hasn't been. The numbers didn't seem to warrant it. And I think even one of the interested individuals was someone who doesn't live at the particular residence. So I was swayed to say let's stand on the side of less regulation unless and until something's needed. But I would be one of the first people to say, don't test me on that one, because I would be more than happy to sit down with our planning department and provide more regulations if people can't keep their houses under control. And I would say that publicly at a council meeting as well. Don't test me, because I also believe in law and order, and I'm not gonna have residents coming in to visit Pembroke and disturbing our actual tax-paying residents. So.
Okay, the other like chain of thought that comes with short-term rental is in bigger cities, at least, we know it's taking away from the regular housing stock. And we do know that we have a shortage of housing supply in Pembroke. So I wonder if there's a way that we can, without going the licensing route, like trying to at least keep a tab on like how many of the housing units are used for these kinds of operations, which do fall a little bit in a gray zone.
We could do that for sure. We can.
I don't know how it would be done. But
well, what we can do is, maybe every quarterly or something, we can check the different platforms, and just keep like a record of what we're finding. And then if we see that it's starting to increase, then we may, and our complaints are increasing as well, then we're going to have to look at how we're going to address this. Yeah,
because anecdotally, I had a clay student coming in, like it was not last summer, it was the summer before. She was here for a 3 or 4 months contract, and she ended up trying to negotiate with the owner of an Airbnb place for a 3-month rental, because there was absolutely nothing available in the market. And she could find housing this way. But yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the committee, I've had the opportunity with Owen to attend the Renfrew County, a meeting that talked about these issues in different communities. So I think coming away from that meeting, we're sort of lucky that we have a small, minuscule number of these that we know of, Marie-Josée, as you said, in the community, and that we can enforce through our bylaw enforcement if need be. But in areas like Madawaska Valley, where they had 243 of these and just out of control, and they would say, well, we just can't handle it. If you have 100 calls during the week, who do you send? We can't handle it. We don't have the staffing, which I could understand. And what they wanted to do was to put some sort of a kibosh on us where they could have more control. And subsequently, the topic came up about the owner maybe being there or being responsible. But I mean, it's very difficult to tell an owner of a building where he should be when he really, does he want to be there? He could be on vacation. He said, who are you to tell me that I should be in my home 24/7? So it could become a logistic thing where people would object to that. But in the interim, I mean, they're having a real problem dealing with people with noise issues and they can't handle it. It's a nightmare. And it's a larger scattered area to maintain, whereas we are here within the community city of Pembroke, where we do have bylaw, we have policing that can respond fairly quickly, whereas that's a scattered area. So I think we're sort of in a bit of a different boat. But as Councillor Keel said, we have to revisit it and play hardball. Well, that's our role. We can do that. But at present, I don't think, through you, Mr. Chair, to Owen or to Colleen, that we're really having a real raging problem with the issue, right?
Correct. Through you, Mr. Chairman, not at this point, no.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the second item. Okay, so the second item in this planning report deals with 0 Eganville Road. It's a city-owned property. It's land that's beside Rondo Park, and it's located, which Rondo Park is located at 415 Carmody Street. So this land right now is zoned R2. And however, due to its location along the Indian River, it should be zoned open space, slope stability, and hazard. So from the top of the bank down to the river should be hazard, and then up at the top should be open space -- slope stability. Due to the proximity of the water and the slope of the land, development isn't permitted on this property. So this was just an error in the zoning, and we're just correcting it so that it's nobody owns it. Like I said, the city owns it, and we're just trying to rectify that. Now, there may be a gentleman in the audience that called about this particular item.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead. Yes.
You might have to.
Percy Shiskowski. I live on Carmody Street. I'm just curious about why it is being classed as hazardous. I like more information. What does hazardous mean to the property?
Okay. So through you. So hazard means that from the top of the bank down to the river, that's classified as hazard. So you couldn't build on the embankment anyway, because that's the slope that's going down. And then the top part of it, we're concerned with erosion and slope stability, things like that. So we're going to change the zone, proposing to change the zone to open space, which would be the same zoning as Rondo Park. And then that would be slope stability. So that piece of property, along with all the properties that are along the Muskrat, along the Indian, also have the hazard zoning from the top of the bank down to the water. And they also have the slope stability on the top part of the bank. So no development can take place within 100 feet from the top of the bank unless there's a supporting geotechnical study that says the soil is stable enough to hold something there. But because this is attached basically to Rondo Park and it's landlocked, there's no development, and it's city owned, so there's no development being proposed.
Yes.
So the zoning was incorrect.
I realize that, but I'm more confused about the hazard because I'm hearing from people telling me that, and even it's situated too on Moffat Street, that when they went to sell a house, the owner, the new purchaser, couldn't get a mortgage for the house because it's classed as hazard, and it depreciates the value of the house. Like if I go to sell my house and I'm classed as a hazard, does that not affect my value of my house?
So values of homes and mortgages and banking is not considered planning principles. And so they're not considered in our report. That's not something that is that we deal with. So you'd have to talk to your bank or something like that. But we're just looking at good development that is in a good, safe spot. And so in this particular case, it is a city-owned property, and that's the only piece of property that we're talking about right now is that one, and that's
that one
being
there.
proposed to be rezoned. Yeah.
Okay. No, I'm just curious, like with the hazard zone in my property, I've lost a bit of it. Like on both sides of my house, both properties on both sides are okay. But whatever happened to mine, the bottom washed out, like the city property is like the water, and then part of my, there's a strip of land about 20 feet that belongs to the city right along both on the river.
Okay.
See, that went out, and when that washed out, it took mine with it. I had some trees on there and they're gone. The trees were there supporting the land. And I had about, 4 feet. I had a shed there, which was 4 feet away, and it just took trees, everything. And so I tore the shed down that was close to it because it was right at the edge.
Oh, wow.
So I removed the shed. I still have a piece of a shed there, but it's got cement piers. The bylaw officer was up and looked at it, and she confirmed that, I have cement piers in there, and it's about 4 feet away now. But whatever happened, it took it away. And when I go down right now, I can go, in the fall, I went down and there's a strip of land there about 6 feet wide that I can take a steel rod with one hand and shove it down in the clay, 2 feet in. It's just soup. I can't walk on it. I'll go right up to my knees and there's water coming there someplace. And when in 2020, they did Carmody Street, they put the sidewalk in and they removed the top pavement and they went down about a foot to put a new gravel in to put the proper grade. And when I walked on that, I bounced that road. I could walk on and no. So I phoned Mr. Brian Lewis, and he said there was a clay boil there. So they dug it out and put stone in and paved it. But right now there's a hole, I guess it's about 2 foot round hole there that sunk down. It's down about 6 inches. The pavement just went in. Now I realize they're going to do Carmody Street with the water and sewer, and they've got a couple spots marked out that they're going to take soil samples. I'm wondering if they can take a soil sample where that hole is, where it's sunk in. At the same time, they're doing it. Is it possible to get that done? I realize it's not affecting Eagle Road there, but it's something that.
Mr. Chair, I through you to Mr. Trzaskowski, appreciate you coming. That's probably a better topic for the operations department. They would deal with that and the soil samples, et cetera, because we're dealing with the planning issues basic. I'm not trying to put you off.
No.
I'm just trying to say, I think I've been to your area.
Yeah.
Sure, just prior to the election there was a problem with snow or whatever. But I understand where you live. You have a beautiful home there. And I can understand your quandary perhaps.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, so when you bought the home, was there a hazardous rating on your deed? I don't know if that's.
No, see, I lived there all my life. And then in 88, I tore the house down. There was a log house and I tore it down and got building permit and that and built a brand new house where the old one was.
Yeah. Anyway, Mr. Lewis, I'm sure and his department, when they start to do the soil samples there, they'll probably be able to give you a more definitive answer.
When they took the hazard zone, when they did it a few years ago, did it not cover right up to all of like Christie Street or Eagle Road at that time? Is there lots I realize you're doing that, but would it not cover right through it when they did it last time?
All the lands through you, Mr. Chairman, all the lands along the Indian and the Muskrat River have a hazard designation.
Okay.
Okay, so from the top of the bank down to the river is hazard. And then the upper portion up to 100 feet is a slope stability zone.
Okay.
So you'll see the very similar zonings all along the rivers.
Now, does it cover right from, let's say, Eagle Road right through the Boundary Road, where the Indian River goes through the city?
Yes, wherever there is the river. Yes.
It's all hazard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay then.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the third item in this report, it deals with uses in the hazard, floodplain, open space, and economic enterprise zones. So all of these uses, or all of these zones, have a private park as a permitted use. And a private park is defined in the zoning bylaw as a recreational area that's in whole or in part for profit by a private club and can include camping areas, boating facilities, tennis courts, bowling greens, and such. So this use should be a site-specific zoning to ensure the public and adjacent property owners have an opportunity to comment. So we would like to remove the private park as a permitted use from these zones and then continue to keep the private park definition. But then if somebody does want to come up with a camping ground, then at least then the public gets an opportunity to comment on that particular use through a rezoning.
Yes.
Okay, do we currently have properties in these, with these zoning and a private club already set up? Like, would they have an exception?
They would then be grandfathered.
Okay.
If there was. The one I'm thinking about that we were concerned about was at the corner of International Drive and Upper Valley Drive. No, Highway 41, Paul Martin Drive. At the old what's it called? The old Visitor Information Center.
Oh,
There was
okay.
a discussion about having a campground there.
Okay,
And so,
but there's none currently.
no.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
So what is a concern? Because a lot of these don't seem to be that big of a deal. Like if I'm living somewhere and my neighbor wanted to put up a tennis court or a bowling green, or, I mean, I suppose a campsite might be the most, but in the specific example you gave, I mean, they're out in the industrial park. I mean, somebody could certainly move in next door with something worse than a campsite. I'm wondering why I care if somebody sets up one of these things, because they're not the most, like, to me, living next door, they're not the most egregious things that could be built next door to your house.
Okay, through you. In the hazard and floodplain zones, it should be removed, period. It shouldn't even be in there because there should be no development. Okay, in the open space and economic enterprise, because, yeah, some of these aren't egregious uses, but there could be a campsite there. Or what we could do is we could redefine a private park and take the camping areas out. I mean, somebody that's living beside a park could have it without a rezoning, without having any kind of consultation, have a use of a campground there. So that's why we just thought, because we had this one issue, it came up, and we thought, well, maybe then it would be, beneficial to have the public have their say. But if you don't agree, that's fine. We'll just maybe just keep it to the hazard and floodplain zones. Just remove the private park from hazard and floodplain zones.
Yeah, I'm just not sure I'm moved to be concerned about even the campground.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm in if next door to my place is, zoned commercial, there's any number of different types of commercial stuff. Some would bother me more than, an office building would probably be nice and quiet, but a takeout restaurant or something obviously would have a lot of traffic, and I wouldn't get to comment on that. So I'm just, I would be more inclined, your second thought, to take if there's something we're worried about campground specific, I'd be more inclined to go down that road. But just so far, nothing moves me to be worried that somebody might set up one of these things next door, frankly, including a campground. But yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Ed, I think I jumped in there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Colleen. Riparian rights, you're familiar with the term?
Yes.
How would that impact what we're talking about here? Is there any impact?
No.
None.
No, this is, okay. So there's certain setbacks and guidelines that they would have to be set back from the high water mark and all that kind of stuff. So, and riparian rights, I don't think would fall into this.
Can you just give us an example what riparian rights mean?
Riparian rights. So riparian rights is the ability to use the water, the shoreline.
Okay.
And whether you own it or not, some people, you have the ability to access the waterfront. But this is not
Okay.
dealing with riparian rights.
I'm a little bit in a quandary. So if I owned a piece of property that went to the water and somebody came and camped on my shoreline saying, I can camp here under riparian rights because you don't own the shore.
Yeah,
Because the water, would I be correct?
yes.
I would. Okay. I'll leave it. Thank you.
So direction then in this particular,
So if I understand where the conversation has been going, we would be focusing only on hazard and floodplain and removing economic enterprise out of the equation.
so I think the direction, what I'm hearing is that the floodplain and hazard zones would remove the public park and continue to keep the private park and continue to keep the private park in open space and economic enterprise zones.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, private park, remove. Gotcha. Okay, fourth item. This is the Renfrew County building and provincial offenses court. So right now they're zoned highway commercial and they should be zoned institutional. And so I did speak to the CAO of the County of Renfrew, and he's definitely in favor of it, having the zoning cleaned up. And he would like to have it zoned as institutional. And again, it's just a housekeeping item just to reflect what the actual use is. Okay, so that's good. Okay. The fifth item is food vehicles like chip trucks and things like that. We have them in commercial and industrial zones, but we don't have them in institutional zones. So did you want to consider adding them in institutional zones as well?
Is there a specific reason why this is brought forward?
There is none at this point, no.
Okay.
Should I speak to that? Does that mean permanently there or what?
No, so a food truck, no, it wouldn't be permanently
Okay,
there.
so the only thing I can think of is that last year or the year before, remember she walked, we had, it was a day for
Okay.
people to do different things, and one of the things we did is we had a truck attend. Would that influence what we're saying?
So that would permit it now.
Would permit?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So if Miramichi wanted to have a food truck, like on a permanent basis, as long as it met the setbacks and the licensing requirements, like of the zoning bylaw and the licensing bylaw, then it could stay there if the zoning is changed to permit that. Right now, like I'm just thinking of a food truck. I don't know, I can't even think of any, but they are allowed right now in commercial zones. So as long as they have their license and they meet the setback and the parking requirements, then they will be issued a license.
What about like when, I don't know what the Shamrock Park is owned, but like when Beavertail sets up there because Shamrock Park, for all I know, could be commercial, it could be zoned open space. I have no idea what that.
It's zoned open space.
So should we be looking at that
But in this
or-
particular case, because it's a city-owned piece of property,
Okay.
we have the ability to do the to put uses on there temporarily should we want to.
I guess what I would prefer the more open permission as far as planning is concerned, and then
Okay.
we deal with specific cases with the licensing side of things, because I think we can be more flexible on that end. If I'm correct in that thought.
So say that again. Sorry, you'd like it.
So like I think we should, I mean, not residential, but I think we should open this up.
Yeah.
And then if there's specific concerns, we can deal with it when they're applying for their license.
Right. And there are specific provisions and requirements in the licensing bylaw that are required.
Because
So-
I could see a church wanting Beavertails to come by
Yeah.
or something like that.
or
So-
school.
or schools
Yeah.
for fundraising purposes and stuff. So I would rather us be more permissive here because
Okay.
this is harder to change.
Yep.
The licensing bylaw council can rather quickly deal with licensing factors, but obviously when we're dealing with planning, there's notice and times and meetings and stuff like that. So I think we should be more permissive here and then deal with any fallout in the licensing side.
Okay, fair enough.
So a school, a church, these would be zoned in institutional.
Mhm.
Okay. But you also mentioned parks. The parks are open spaces?
They're open space, so would you?
We're
like-
not considering that here.
Well, I
or are
can,
we?
I can if you like, if you want to. Oh,
Through you, Mr. Chair, food vehicles are already permitted uses under the open space zoning.
thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. That sounds
Perfect. Okay, I forgot to add that, obviously, in my, in my report. Okay, so we'll allow them in institutional, okay? So the sixth item, it deals with the fencing section of our zoning bylaw, and it's just taking the word shall not to say shall. So right now, an unpierced hedgerow or other unpierced plantings shall be deemed to be a fence, and the maximum height stated in provisions 4 and 5 of this section. In the zoning bylaw right now, it says shall not apply to such plantings, but it should say shall apply to such plantings. So it's just taking the not out of there. It's just not worded properly. Okay? Okay. Uh-oh.
Thinking of a lot of houses that have 12-foot.
Well, there's fence, there's height requirements though in that section 4 and 5.
Maximums. Like the
Yep.
fences.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just saying. I don't think anywhere in residential areas you can have a 12-foot fence, but I can think of a lot of 12-foot hedges. Oh, well.
Okay, so does our fences say that hedges have to be, there's a maximum for hedges? There's a maximum height for hedges as well?
Like it says that it's supposed to be considered. It's the same.
Yeah, it's a fence and a hedge are the same, so there should be max. Okay, okay. Okay, seventh item. So we want to amend the bylaw by removing the maximum number of dwelling units, of one dwelling unit in a C3 zone. So there should be no maximum as long as the provisions of the C3 zone are met. So apartment units are permitted above and below the main floor commercial units, main floor commercial building. So right now, we don't have any maximum in the C2 zone as long as the setbacks are met, as long as the parking is met. So it's just taking that one out of there and just leaving it blank. And then if we can, we'll figure it out how many can fit based on the zoning bylaw provisions and based on parking requirements. Because right now, you look downtown, most of those apartments, those buildings have more than one apartment in them. So that's something that's wrong. So we just want to take that
And
out.
frankly, if you were to build a new one, you'd probably be putting more than
More than
one.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's okay. So
And I mean, we can, there's building height requirements, there's minimum square footage, like there's lots of ways that we would already be regulating
Exactly.
those upper units.
Yeah, yeah. So our eighth item is under the interpretation section of the zoning bylaw. And it should be amended to reflect the change in the size of sheds from 10 square meters to 15 square meters as amended by the Ontario Building Code. So right now, we used to be, if you had a 10 square meter shed, you didn't need a building permit. But now the Ontario Building Code has been amended to increase that down to 15 square meters. So just to make it in line with the Ontario Building Code. Okay, so I guess based on our conversation and based on the changes, I would need a motion from this committee that you're in favor of the changes as discussed today.
All in favor?
Perfect, thank you. That I know.
Okay. Past decision updates.
Could I
Yes, I'm
ask
sorry.
one question while we're doing housekeeping matters? Have we looked at the plans for the new proposed plans for Shamrock Park versus actual like setbacks and stuff? And would those apply to us?
You mean the proposed new Shamrock Park?
Like adding a bandstand?
I haven't seen anything.
Okay,
I haven't seen anything.
because there might be some setback things. And
I
stuff.
would, and site plan, or sorry, site triangle issues too, we'd want to look at, just to make sure.
Yeah.
So, yes, I would love to receive a copy of it, to be able to provide some comments.
Okay, because then maybe we can take care of that beforehand, so that we don't end up a situation like the operations shed
Yes, good idea. Okay,
in terms of updates. Sorry.
okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So regarding past decisions of the last meeting date for this committee, the first is a consent to sever application and a minor variance application for 188 Renfrew Street from the Diocese of Pembroke. This application was tabled at the request of the applicant. It remains tabled for the time being. Next were two, there was a zoning bylaw amendment for 163 Peter Street, and there was a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment for 240 McKay Street. Both of these applications, after the past committee meeting, moved to public meetings of council that were held on March 5th. They were then passed as bylaws on March 19th. They are currently within their 20-day appeal period, which is set to close, I believe, April 9th.
Thank you very much. Owen. Next meeting, we're all right for Monday, April the 29th. 24. Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair?
Oh, yes, okay, sorry.
Before we adjourn, getting back to the, the food trucks and all that, I just want to notify that there were two monks that purchased a food truck to raise funds for a local church. So it was fish and chips. So business was just fabulous. So one lady said to one of the monks, "Are you the fish fryer?" He said, "No, I'm the chip monk." Thank you. I just had to throw that in. Bit of levity.
Motion to adjourn.